Good morning. Good morning. Welcome as I'm all fuzzy. Hello. Hello, camera. Thank you for focusing. Appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Friday, July 31st, the last day of July 2026. And today is day 4,935 days in a row of daily art, right? Is that right? Yeah, 4935. Fantastic. Okay. I'm excited because we're going to be talking about this painting still. Not sure if I'll finish it today. I'm going to try to. I'm going to try and really work on this painting, on the places that I'm having issues with right now. And hopefully we'll get finished with it. But, the good thing about it, yesterday I was a little bit annoyed at that shadow line that's happening. You can see my reference. But I looked at it today and I'm like, you know what? That's not too bad. Okay, it's not too bad. Looking pretty good. I'm happy with it. Just got a few things to correct. But before we get into that, I'm going to put out my paints. I'm going to allow some people to come in to show up for the stream. And then we're going to talk about all the different ways, or a lot of different ways, that we can apply paint. And within that, I'm going to be trying out some new brushes today that I got from Rosemary & Company. So I can talk to you about those brushes. And maybe even the other brushes, because it's very related. It's very relational. When we talk about applying paint, all the different brushes that are out there, the different brushes that we have, does affect it. So that's part of it. So I'm working with a somewhat limited palette. Not so much anymore, because I've added in more than just the Zorn palette on here. So that's Williamsburg Titanium White, and then Phoenix Artist Oils. What is it? Lemon Yellow Hue. And this is Winsor Newton Winton, and I'm about done with this yellow ochre. I have another tube back there. I always pick inexpensive paints. I like Winsor Newton Winton and Phoenix Artist Oils. I think I like Winsor Newton Winton a little bit better, just because of the viscosity of it. It's a preference that I have, obviously. And the great thing about Winsor Newton Winton is, like, this cadmium red hue doesn't have any heavy metals in it, right? And it has a nice cadmium red color to it. Plus it's opaque. And that's really hard to get. That's really hard to get in a lot of paints. Usually, you get a professional brand that has a cadmium red. It won't be a hue. It'll have cadmiums in them, which, are heavy metals. And heavy metals aren't a problem as long as you don't get any of the paint in your body, on your skin and stuff. And I'm a very clean painter, so it's not a big deal for me. But I like to stay away from them because they're harder to dispose of, like all the waste, right? But cadmium red hue, no cadmiums, but still opaque. And that's really, I love that with Winsor Newton Winton. Student brand, and it gives me everything I want. And the last time I looked at the price of these paints on Dick Blick, they're like $4 a tube. I mean, you can't beat that for the professional quality that they have on them. Anyway, I know if my brush is down. This is Alizarin Crimson by M. Graham. It's the only Alizarin Crimson that I have. Hey, Dennis, what's up? Welcome. And then Ultramarine Blue by Rembrandt, and then Ivory Black by Winsor Newton Winton. Okay, there's my palette. I'm going to continue working on that. But first, before we get into that, I want to talk about a couple brushes that I purchased. Well, 6 to be exact. I've been buying brushes from Rosemary & Company, which is a UK company, and I want to get these together in order. Actually, I could just show 3 of these because I bought 2 of each. Whenever I buy a brush, I always buy at least 2 of each, because if it's a good brush and I like the brush, I want to be able to have multiple different colors in that brush. So I'm going to show you these real quick. These are called, what series is this? Series 303 236 and 302. They're basically the same synthetic hair. You could see the bigger difference is the length. I didn't like that this one was that long. Honestly, I was trying to look on their website and figure out like the lengths that they were talking about, and I wanted something around that length, and I got that pretty closely. Because these are like super cheap Art Smith brushes that I like, but I love the snap of them that they have, right? Maybe you can kind of hear that snap. I like that because that's the certain stiffness that I like. Now this brush here, super, super like flopsy, right? Because it's so long, but still a good brush. I'll probably try it in a lot of ways. Probably the most way that I'll use this is to soften out some edges. Maybe I'll try it with thick paint, but it is a very flopsy brush. It'd be kind of interesting to see what kind of texture that makes. The next one down, as far as length, still the same hair. Because it gets a little bit smaller in length, it's not as flopsy. So it has a little bit more stiffness to it. So very unstiff, a little bit more stiff. So this one's not too bad. It's less stiff than the ones that I have, those cheap brand that I have. And this one might be perfect just because of the length of it. We'll see. So I'm going to be playing around with those brushes today. And yeah, I'll let you know how they feel. I also have other Rosemary brushes. These are the short flats. I have long flats. These guys, these are the ivory ones. They have a bit more of that kind of snap to them that I like. So I like those a lot, but they're a little bit more stiff. Honestly, I wish that they weren't so sharp. I wish they were, you know, a little bit splayed to get some texture, some differences in texture. Would be kind of cool. You don't use your bag of Gamblin paints yet? Oh, I gave those all away. I used to use Gamblin years ago, but something about the Gamblin brand, they got really thick, really stiff. And there was, I remember the last Gamblin tube I used was a brand new titanium white with their brand new logo and everything on it. And by the time I got halfway through that paint, it was had chunks of stiffness in it. And it's just super stiff paint. If you like super stiff paint, go with Gamblin. I haven't tried Gamblin, but I love that thick paint. Well, there you go. Thick paint. And it really, I've always said this, Dennis. I've said this to everyone. It depends on your surface and your brush and the paint, all three of those, right? So if you have a super thick paint, it might be better if you're painting with like a hog's hair bristle, a very stiff brush to be able to move that around. I prefer softer synthetic brushes. And when I try to go into that paint, it doesn't move around that much. It doesn't move around enough. Now, on the other end of that is the M. Graham paint. It's very, it's like it has a high viscosity. It's very fluid, much more fluid. So that works with like this, this new brush I got that's really flopsy. I bet you the M. Graham paint would work really well with it. We'll have to see on that. Okay. I did this interesting thing yesterday. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about my brain a little bit. And, you know, we have to be careful when we go into Chris's brain because it could be a time. It could be some fun stuff. But what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to pull a bunch of images into Photoshop and we're going to talk about them. Because I had some ideas for applying paint. Hopefully Photoshop doesn't crash my computer because I'm opening like 31 images in it like right away. So let's see, let me show my screen. And let's start at the beginning right here. Nikolai Feshin. I'm trying to, I want to use my keyboard plus a brush here. There we go. Not that color. Let's do like a bright red color. Let's just like pick a bright red. So what I was doing, can I zoom this easily? Yeah, that's about as much as I can zoom in. Hopefully you guys can see this. I like Krita more when I'm working with a stylus than I do Photoshop, but you know, there we go. Whoa, really deep into it now, but the quality gets really terrible. So I pulled these images. You can see like the names for the images are a bunch of numbers. I was randomly on Pinterest. I was looking for something specific. Not specific. I was just looking at just random paintings on my Pinterest, right? Which I don't use. I just barely go on there because it's full of a bunch of junk, half the time. But I started running across all these different paintings. This is by Nikolai Fechin, Fechin. And we're going to go the full gambit, like really old paintings to some generated stuff. And yeah, I hate generated stuff, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in this understanding of applying paint and texture. And we're going to go through a few of these as quickly as I can. And the main idea that I want to talk about, the main thing that I want to impart on everyone that is watching this is how important it is to think about not only like the ways that you apply paint, but how you can adjust that to get a deeper understanding of your narrative, to wake you up out of a consistent way that you paint that could be quote unquote boring or the same all the time because it's something that you just don't think about, right? So Nikolai Fechin, this is an artist, and I know just a little bit about Nikolai Fechin. I wish I had like more pixels to show you here, but this is an artist that I heard at one point would leave paint on his palette for days at a time and let it get pretty dry, pretty thick, and hard to work with. And you can kind of see some indications of that, like right here, where it's very dry and it's kind of scraped across the top of the canvas, right? Very dry there. Can I turn this down so it's smaller? Yeah. Very dry there and very thick. If you've ever seen Nikolai Fechin paintings, especially in the focal points, like the faces and stuff, very, very thick paint. And then you look at these areas like right here where there's all these lines where there's just like an indication of like just kind of this like really quick movements of paint everywhere. And then randomly very thick up there. I mean, there's a myriad of ways of applying paint just in this one painting by Nikolai Fechin. Let's move on to the next. I'm going to move through these pretty quickly because you'll start seeing through all of these like what is possible, right? Look at this one. Super thick paint, luscious paint. Like you can tell that this is probably like M. Graham paint. Look at, you can see all the like the bristles in these brushes. Like this is a person that's loading up their brush with all kinds of paint and then putting it down like big strokes, really thinking about, like this is an end stroke right here. Look how thick that is. You can see all the ridges, super thick paint, big areas. Like this is underpainting right here. And then coming back in and kind of cutting in the white into that in places. Super simple way of painting. And then either palette knife or the back of the brush cutting into that thick paint for the whiskers of this kitty cat. Pretty cool. All right, move to the next one. Look at this one. Look how beautiful this is. Now, without thinking about, and we can think about it because it is there, without thinking about, the quality of this is terrible. Sorry. Without thinking about like how bright this is, because we have, blue next to yellow. So like complementary colors, like really crazy. But this is such thick paint. I believe it's put on with a palette knife because you can see how it kind of piles up at one end and then is super smooth in the center. Because if you put on paint with a brush like that, you'll get that same piling up on the end of each brush stroke, but it won't be as smooth in the center. You'll see some of those bristles. And then over here on the left side of the painting, like this is where they're experimenting with super thick paint, but with a brush. You can see more of those bristle marks within it. Super, super thick and really haphazard in a lot of places. And then we get up to the face here. And I believe this is probably a generated piece, right? Just because of this transition. I can't see, you know, a human artist doing this. I wish the the resolution on this image was a bit better. But interesting ways of applying paint. Let's move on to the next one. I know this is a real painting. Definitely. I'm not sure of a lot of these artists, by the way. So bare canvas with charcoal. Okay. Leaving that bare canvas in. Look at this. All bare canvas within here. Wonder if I can make that red a little bit brighter so we can see. Like all the way up here. There we go. And then again, very thick paint. Very thick paint. And it's not that all of the ways to paint, oh man, I did the back one. All the ways to paint are just adding more paint to your brush and putting it down. But it could be, or it is, this variation within the same painting. Nothing on the canvas, just charcoal, and then thick paint throughout that. And we'll get into some differences, some further differences within all this. But I picked this out because I love this part of the painting. Let me back up a little bit. We have all of this information that they're putting in here with the eyes and the nose. And then all of a sudden, right at the end, there's this super brave stroke. I mean, they've already kind of like, you know, they're all on the deep end, this artist is. And then this big stroke here, just straight down. You know, the stroke starts here and just blends all of that together. Really big brush. Why did they do that? For that expression, you know? It's you already know when you come into this painting that they're not trying to do Bouguereau. They're not trying to express the exactness of this, but expressing in paint itself. I mean, they worked with all these strokes on the ear. Maybe that's, you know, a sense of frustration here with this brush stroke. Like, oh, I'm frustrated with this painting. It's not going well. And then just bam, just marked it all down. This one was really interesting because not only paint, but also after it dries, we got these stencils. Look at this. All these stencils that are in here. I mean, this is something where the artist is really bringing in a narrative, an intentional narrative, same stencil over and over and over and over again, or similar stencil. I love the idea of painting very expressively. Look at all these different colors of paint on the cheek, very thick, and then in other places being very thin, but then trying to get the drawing back on these fingers here with very specific drawn lines. You see those? Those different ways of applying paint on the same painting. Very expressive ways of painting. You know, those lines will come back in. Not sure who that artist is. I saw this one real quick. Very, like, shocking in a lot of ways. I mean, look at this red. I mean, you can't even see it. That red there versus the blue. So super high saturation, high contrast. Very detailed here in the face. But then what is all this? What is this craziness? I can't even tell if that's like a palette knife, or I think it's a combination of, you know, you're taking like a palette knife and scraping off, but there's a lot of that paint left. It's kind of thin, you know, in the center, but thicker on the edges. There's like a red in the background where the blue has gone over it. You know, as the more I look at this, I'm like, oh, is this a generated piece? You know, did a computer get in here and do this thing? But interesting ways of thinking about applying paint, even though it's generated, even though I hate generated art. So this is Jennifer Gennari. I love how she paints cats and dogs. She's a animal portraitist. Look how beautiful each of these strokes are. So what's important within her work that I've seen is not only a sense of like almost transparency in some places where I think some of the white is showing through, but there's a thickness as well. A thickness in these paints, these brush strokes. But what's important about it, like if we look at this brush stroke here, what's most important are the ends of those strokes, where it's all about, you know, here's a stroke here that starts here, goes this way, and then fades into nothing. Expressing hair. Here's a beautiful one here. This stroke. goes this way, fades into hair. You know, I think she could paint long hair cats better than anybody on the planet. It's beautiful. And then again, you know, scraping in for those whiskers, but then putting white on the canvas for these whiskers. And I think that's a combination of both scraped in and white. Let's go on to the next one. I'm going to keep moving here. Control tab will go next. Oh, this one was really interesting. So the difference in texture on the same painting is pretty extreme here. We have these left to right brushstrokes, intentional. We're describing the water. And then you get that moment within beaches, and I know we've probably all seen this, where the waves come in and then they recede, and what's left is super smooth, wet sand. And then it's a very different texture from the sand that people are walking through here. You know, you got people that have set up, you know, all of their stuff. There's people here. So palette knife here, big, thick brush of paint here, big, thick paint here. Interesting. Very beautiful. And a big palette knife. Look how big that, maybe that's a small brush. That palette knife size is like this, maybe larger. That's one big size. Talking about all the different ways of applying paint. Look at the thickness on this one. I mean, that's just... Well, the interesting thing about this is not only is it super thick, and you can see this indication here. Look at the variation in paint colors within single strokes. And here, 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 everywhere within here. This is an artist, when they mix their paint on their palette, they don't mix it to a point where it looks like house paint. You know, where you go to your local hardware store and they get a paint, like a bucket of white paint, and then they squirt a bunch of colors in there, and then they shake it until it's all one even color. This artist does not do that. They make sure intentionally that these colors are half mixed before they grab it with their brush. And they want that variation, and they put it down super thick, super thick. And then we get into, I don't know this artist, but smoothness, like an airiness with the texture. So the brush is evident still. It's still somewhat thick paint, but it's all about those edges, how they soften out, soften out. Everything is soft. Look how beautifully soft it is here. There's a lot of attempt to soften out here, soften out all these edges. Look at the beauty in just the transition from this left side of the peel, okay, to, or the right side of the peel here to the left side here. Those subtle value changes in how soft it is. Softness. So this is an artist that loves softness, which is very different than the previous one we saw. We get further into that here. Look how soft this is. You can, it's so soft. There's indications of like the graphite coming through. So this is a person putting it down using a very, very soft brush to kind of like smooth everything out. Super, super soft. Beautiful. Look how different this is. Like from this one to this one. Somewhat, you know, super chunky and hard, somewhat soft to super soft. This, I don't know. I have no idea. I can't explain what's going on here. I'm not sure if this is a real artist or a computer generated thing, but I found it really interesting. There's like a Bouguereau soft quality with all the blending of things that go in here, but then broken with all these lines, sharpness within there. If we can learn anything from AI, it would be how to apply paint all these different ways on the same painting and make something a little bit interesting. Now, I know this one is definitely AI generated because, well, at least I think it is. We're getting to that point where it's like hard to tell, but I don't see this being where someone can apply this. But I liked it because it was a different, strange way of looking at paint. It was almost like it's so thick that it was put on and it's starting to kind of like fall off the painting, like it's dried but then scraped down and falling down a little bit. It's pretty interesting. It gives me this idea of like, I wonder if I could, not do it this way because I think it's AI, but how could I put half dried paint on there in like these like strips of layers of paint that is dried on my palette that looks like that, and then peel it off my palette and then glue it to my painting? Be pretty interesting, right? This one's gorgeous. Look at this. All this different, like, let's put some graphite in there. Let's keep it really thin here. I mean, a very Baroque way of painting, but in a very contrast way. I believe this is more, as I look at these textures here, pastel. So more pastel, but still gorgeous. So gorgeous. So still a Baroque way of painting because we'll see like the most thick areas here within the light. And then in the darker areas, these shadow areas, very thin, but brought into like a contemporary hemisphere of way of painting, right? I love the greens, the flesh tones. Oh my gosh, the pinky reds, right? Purples. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, this is wonderful too. I was looking at this one earlier. Look how like just random this is. This is a bunch of random paint. If I feel like, let me back up again. I feel like this was a board where a person was just slapping extra paint on it and all of this, the whole board, right? And then they came back and they said, you know what? I'm going to draw, this head with the eyebrow and a little bit of the middle of the nose and that eye and this indication of eye and there, and draw this, and here's where the mouth, and they're drawing this out. They put the black down, and then they come in, they go, oh, okay, so let me do the background over all that extra paint to identify subject versus background, and then start cutting into all that, adding in some lighter areas to indicate a cheek, the top of the eyelid, and constantly thinking about, how can I do this with as simple as information as possible? And what results in, when we're up close to it, is just piles of paint and craziness. But we pull back, it's probably like, oh, that's Jeremy, right? Some person we know. Really interesting. This I really liked a lot. Not sure if this is a real artist either. So this is a Bouguereau painting, not influenced by a Bouguereau painting, where I think I have that in my bank of images. There's like a nymphs dancing around this guy. And so this is an interpretation of that, but in a more expressive way, thinking about the energy of the original painting and putting it down simply. But you can look at this and go, oh my gosh, this person has a deep understanding of anatomy and drawing, and these things are put down specifically and beautifully. Even though they're blurry, they're all over the place, there's textural, there's still a sense of draftsmanship that's there. I love that dichotomy. On one end, we have expressiveness, and on the other end, we have, pro draftsman expressiveness, and they merge those two together into this painting. Gorgeous. Oh, I love this artist. So this is Juan Diaz, D-I-A-Z. Juan Diaz is amazing because, I mean, he does some really cool, like hyper influenced by contemporary culture stuff. Like I believe some of these images are from like Pinterest, but I love his way of using paint in very soft ways. Big, broad areas of one color. Look at the muzzle of this kitty here, all one color. And then he'll come back in with like either graphite, charcoal, or even paint and make all these interesting textures, describe the bounds and the drawing of this kitty cat here. And then in a lot of his paintings, he'll go back into it with paint and create just this amazing sense of texture. Yeah. Juan Diaz. Beautiful. I could show a lot more Juan Diaz. Another cat, of course, I'm going to be drawn to cats, right? Not sure if this is AI generated or not, but it looks pretty accurate as far as like people putting down paint. So this right here, palette knife stroke, okay. You can tell because usually on palette knives, if you have thick paint, one end of it will kind of bunch up like that. And then throughout the whole stroke, it'll be very smooth. I'm pretty sure that's a palette knife or a very soft bristle brush. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like palette knife. This feels like a brush here. Going through all of that. And then right here for how the light kind of goes through the ear of cats, that's very thin paint kind of showing through the bottom. Thinking about all that as we're painting, those different textures, different ways of applying paint. Here we go. And then we get back to like very old paintings where there's hardly any indication of brushwork. And look at all the beauty within, like the smoothness of this. We can feel all of these muscles and bones of the spine beneath the skin. There's the transparency, a translucency that we feel within the skin, and that beautiful fall off of light that happens here. And then in that same painting, we're here. All of this brushwork. More about brush here, about texture. One of the things that I look at paintings that really kind of irk me that some artists do is they'll paint the skin with the same exact way that they would paint like hair or fabric. And that texture is exactly the same. You can't separate the two only by color or value. But here we're looking at an artist that's treating all of this different than up here in very different ways. It could be lots of glazing here and then opaque here. Opaque paint. I got a few more. Anne Gale. Always talk about Anne Gale. So we're up to this close. Nothing but paint. Abstraction. And honestly, most of the paintings that we do, we zoom into them far enough, it turns into abstraction. But when we pull out, we say, oh, portrait. Amazing. Very similar to Van Gogh in a lot of ways, because there's this kind of archaeological way of looking at this painting where we can say, there's a brushstroke there, here's a brushstroke here, maybe that's multiple brushstrokes. There's one. We can pick out like the movement through the painting, but then there's so much of it that we lose ourselves within it, and it devolves into, the bigger idea of a portrait. I think I got Van Gogh coming up. We look at a lot of thick paint, but there are artists that what they love to do is put down paint and then scrape it off. Look at this. See these marks here? You probably see them now. So whatever they used to scrape this painting down, it left those marks. It kind of dug into the paint there a little bit more than any place else. Maybe they built up this painting in multiple layers and decided, okay, it's wet enough or dry enough where if I scrape it off, it's going to leave a lot of it there. And if you use a surface such as like raw paper, and the difference between the background here and the foreground, how it's thick and then scraped, so good. But if you use a surface that like raw paper that is very absorbent, you can put down all kinds of paint, scrape it off, and you would still have the whole portrait there, because it just soaks in those initial layers beautifully. And this is on canvas. You can see the canvas texture there, but it has a beautiful look to it. This kind of soft look. It's gorgeous. Now I pulled all of these off of Pinterest, so most of these could be like AI generated work, which, let's not get into that right yet. So this is an artist that's painting on canvas, and they started with solvent. How do I know that? All of this up here. These kind of runnels of solvent like streaking down the painting. So very solvent heavy paint. Very thin paint. Look how thin this is on you can see how transparent this paint is put down. Not like in a glazing sense over here too, but the idea of letting all the white of the canvas show through. And then in certain places, hey, this is where I want you to look. This is where I'm spending all my time with a bunch of brush strokes. Thick stroke, thick stroke, thick stroke. And I think that's just like a big chunk of titanium white where they put in the value for the forehead and then needed to bring that highlight back. Thick to thin, nothing at all. Scraping in, using solvent. Don't use solvent. It's not good. This is definitely, I think these are generated. I hope they're not. If they're not, I would love to know what artist this is. But I don't know. It looks, as I don't have a high enough quality image to really understand this. But when I look at things like this, I'm like, that looks like one stroke, but it's not really. Like there's a lot of things going on in there. And that's the telltale sign for generated works, is because you look at it and you're like, no, a person couldn't do that. Like there's a tremendous amount in there that is so detailed that it's not a brush. It feels more like a person was working on a canvas that was set flat on the floor, and they poured paint onto the canvas and then took like a stick or something on this white paint and then just did this with the stick inside the paint to kind of mix it together. Kind of like you'll see when coffee artists will make coffee art within the cream on the top. They'll take like a stick and move that cream around to make like shapes. This is what this feels like. It feels like it's watery, but really interesting idea. Like when I look at this, I'm thinking, oh, well, that'd be kind of cool. Could I pour paint onto my paper and just use the back end of my brush to kind of move it around in different ways? That opens up a whole other world of applying paint within texture that I had never thought about before. I love this one. We see, look, we get right here, like the paint was scraped off somehow and the white of the canvas is showing through. We get that kind of glow that we don't get anywhere else with like super thick paint, this super thick purple, super thick here, and then scraped into to kind of resolve that edge of the figure. And then on this side, no, I'm just going to put some thick paint in a line down to separate that. But then on this side, scrape into the ear. I mean, everywhere. I love the expressiveness on there, the bravery of it. And look, down here, it's just all like drip everywhere. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, for me, I think it's beautiful. Oh, we have it again here. I got a couple of these because what I really liked about this, something I've talked about on several pieces is, okay, so we have the back of a figure. So we can feel how the back goes like this. So we have like the pelvis is down here. Okay. And then we have that kind of fatty part of our bodies right there, the love handles, they call it. And then we get into the tailbone down here. Okay. I can even feel like that triangle of the pelvis right here. And it's because like this big brushstroke put in place describes that whole angle very smoothly. And then there was the same paint was put here, but then scraped off and then scraped off even further for a highlight. And then, oh, I need this indication of where that pelvis ends here. So I scraped into it. They scraped into it. I'm like putting myself in their shoes. Like, I want to get as brave as this. I think I'm going to start like really pushing some of my paintings and getting closer to some more abstraction because this is amazing. I want to figure out who this is. If you know, let me know. Oh, this is cool. I've looked at this painting before. And this isn't Nicholas Uribe, but it kind of reminds me of Nicholas Uribe. Look at that beautiful fall off of light that happens here on the face. But this is, it reminds me of Nicholas Uribe because I feel a flat brush being used and thinly in a lot of places. It's almost like um, pastel, like the side of a pastel being used, but just very delineated strokes, structural, structural. There's a few strokes that go straight down in that light color and then straight down here in this color, right? Very structural. Look at this one here, this brush stroke. Like, how can I describe more with less? Really like this one. Do I have more? Yes. Oh, we should all know this close up. Van Gogh. Every single one is delineated. We were looking at Anne Gale. Boom, 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 boom. Like, we can feel Van Gogh working through all this, but layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, just over and over, like incessantly, just beautiful. Look at that pink. And the greens and the yellows and the reds, you know, optical mixture of color. Beautiful. And this one's wonderful too. I love the softness of this painting. I would love to see something like this in person. So I believe in order to achieve something like this, you have to have this like wonderful, it's a little bit less than buttery kind of texture to your paint. So it's more fluid than normal. There's some places where we get more impasto in this paint, so a bit more stiff. Over here in all these areas reminds me of Jennifer Gennari with the cats and dogs that she paints. And then this big drip here, not sure how that happened. And then blank canvas there showing through. Just a lot of subtlety, a lot of softness and hardness kind of brought into the same painting. Just a simple idea, but beautiful. And speaking of harshness, not only in the coloration and the value changes, I believe this is digital. Yeah, that's definitely a digital painting. You can see all this like layering that happens, almost like it's acrylic. But all these different, we can learn a lot from digital artists and how they apply paint in all these different ways. There's a lot of things that we can't do that digital artists can do super, super simple and easy. But all of these different ways of building texture with thin brush strokes, thin, thicker out here, thick, and always about, let me describe this form. Look at the how that curves. Describing that form of this hair, like this roll of the hair. Describing like the form of the ear as we put down this collar. Describing all that. I'm going through a lot of these things. Okay. This is a generated work, I believe. Yeah, again, it feels like maybe it was poured on there and a stick was moved through it to blend all this paint together. Still very pretty. I think we could learn from that. I mean, that's not an artist doing that. Definitely not. But pretty cool. Pretty interesting. This is definitely a human hand. Look how simply this is done. Very smooth up here. Very textural brush. This is like a hog's hair bristle with a lot of paint in it. And using the harshness, see these little, using the harshness of those bristles to soften edges. Yeah, wonderful. And this one, I think this is the last one here. I'm not sure what this is, like real person or not, but it reminds me of one of the previous paintings we were looking at. And we get this idea of the paint put down and then scraped off thinly. Like putting it down, scraping it off, see what's left. Putting it down, scraping off and seeing what's left. And utilizing the absorption of the surface, not only the texture of the surface, because a lot of this here looks like more of the texture of like a gesso that was put down. Like we can feel this whole stroke here of maybe gesso. that was down. And so the paint that's over the top kind of takes in some of that texture that happens. Like in this cat, there's this whole stroke that moves through this way. Yeah, that's definitely like the gesso showing through. And I think that was it. Yeah, back to fashion. And that was a lot. That was a lot of paintings. I think it was like 31 or 32 different paintings. Let's get back to me on here. Oh my goodness. Alt tab. Where am I? Where am I? Here I am. Oh my God, there's like a ton of comments that I need to get through. Sorry about that, guys. But I was going through a bunch of stuff. Okay. Trekell brushes, ever use those? No, those are too expensive, Dennis. I looked at them. They're really expensive. I want to kind of stick with one brand on brushes, like figure out which ones I like the feeling of that are similar to those cheap brushes I have. So I'm sticking with Rosemary and Company right now to try and find the ones that have the right stiffness for me. If I feel like if I go to Trekell, then I'll be spending a bunch more money on different brushes and not really knowing the brand very well, if that makes sense. Into the mind of Chris we go. Yes. Hey, Chris. Hi, Chris. Welcome. Hey, Doobie. Welcome. I've started painting a bit thicker lately. Have a habit of painting thin and smooth. Really love getting enough paint in the surface and not scrubbing. Yeah, that's it happens a lot. Like we get to that point where like, oh, I mixed up this perfect color, right? And I just want to spread it around a lot farther. So we get to like scrubbing, stippling, or there's another like word for it too. That orange painting is Adam Clague. Clague. Okay. Clague Fine Art. Oh, with the orange. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, gorgeous oranges. Oh my God, like some of the colors. Look at this. I love this like green and this orange. It's beautiful. Look at that. Fantastic. Reminds me a bit of David Lafell as well on his paintings. I like how he's holding his paintings. He's like, hey, this is me. I did this. That's really good. We need more and more of that lately. With all the generated work out there, all the slop, we need more of people holding up their own painting. Okay, let me come back to me. And thank you for that. I'm going to keep him up. Hello, all these paintings are amazing. Thank you. Magnus, welcome, Magnus. It's amazing, complex shapes. Dennis says, have you painted your cats? I have painted my cats several times. Not enough, honestly. Yeah, that one turns into lots of little paintings up close. Yeah, Magnus, some of those, you ask, what if these are made on computer? Yeah, some of those were AI generated. And I can kind of tell on some of them. I mean, because I was on Pinterest and I was just pulling stuff off of Pinterest. And the idea isn't copying from, these, generating work because it's terrible. Don't do that. It's killing the planet and killing other artists' livelihood. But kind of utilizing some of that idea to give us a broader understanding of all the myriad different ways that we can apply paint and getting us out of the same way of putting paint down all the time and thinking about, not only the way light behaves, let's say on a portrait or whatever, but how you want your narrative to move through the painting. There's some places where, like on this painting here, it's necessary for what I want to do for that to be just blank paper. Okay, that's just blank paper. There's other places where I need thick paint, make it smooth as possible, right? So, and thinking about like all these different ways of playing with paint. There's a wonderful artist that just popped in my head, and I can't believe that I didn't think about them before. Olga Cremone. I'm going to bring her work up in a moment. Let me find it. LMNO. Okay, let's look at Olga Krimon, Krimnon. I'm going to share my screen again. This is definitely a real artist, not AI slop. Okay. And the one thing I love about Olga, I'm just going to flip through a lot of her paintings. Look at that. It's like gold and silver leaf and then painted on top of that. She is so brave. So brave. Oh my God. Beautiful. The one thing about Olga Krimon is she really thinks about all these different ways of applying paint. Like, how many different textures can I get in a single painting? How many different ways can I put things down? I remember one of her interviews. I think she interviewed with, I can't remember the guy's name. And they looked closely at a lot of her paintings. And she was like, yeah, sometimes I use like this cylindrical thing to make little circles. And she's like, I'll scrape into it with like knives and with like nails and fingernails and credit cards and, the back of a brush, obviously, and all these different things to get just texture, differences in texture. I mean, a painting all about just scraping in. I want to go through. There's a couple I wanted to get to on here. I've collected a lot of her work. Check out her website. Krimon is how you spell her last name. Love this painting. Oof. Not only does she have a deep understanding of draftsmanship, look how beautifully drawn this is, and form itself, but just the bravery to go in there and say, you know what? It's good to throw it down quickly and simply. My goodness. What do I have? Like 6,000 pieces of work for her? Yeah, a whole bunch. A whole bunch. Yeah, Olga Krimon. So thinking about her, man, amazing. Just playing with texture constantly. Okay. Have you painted your cats? Yes, I've painted a few. All unintentionals, never an exact cat. Okay. What if these are made on a computer? Okay, I'm going through the same comments again. Hi, Chris and everyone. Hey, Krista, welcome. He's not reading the chat. Not yet. I'm reading it now, Magnus. Chris says, that's interesting. Hi, Chris, Krista, Magnus, and Dennis. Sacrum. Thank you. Yes, that's the back of the pelvis, that triangle. Bikini triangle. Funny. Oops, blasted keyboard goofs. So everyone here good at art. Hi, Chris. I can't find Juan Diaz. Juan Diaz is hard to find. The only place I can find Juan Diaz, and you spelled it right there, D-I-A-Z. I think that's how you spell Juan Diaz. Instagram. He doesn't have a website. Not sure why. The guy's a mess, I think. Come on, yeah. Oh, not Diaz. Ruiz. Juan Ruiz. Juan-Ruiz. I totally got his name wrong. Juan Ruiz. Here, yeah, put it in chat. Thank you. I'm glad you said that. I hate that useless stroke crap that Van Gogh does. Oh, wow. There we go. Useless stroke crap that Van Gogh does. That blank paper looks painted. Nope, it's blank. Really good. Thank you. How about CW Monday? Oof. Let me look at CW Monday now. Mundy. M-U-N-D-Y. C-W-N-D-Y. Very pretty. I think I'll put this on screen so everybody can see. Charles Warren Mundy. Selected works. I like this piece up here at the top of the website. Look at all that beautiful application of paint. This is you know, quoting or at least responding to what you said, Magnus, like there's a love of the subject, describing the subject in ultimate detail. We can see more of it here in like this work by Mundy, right? And then there's also, which is just as wonderful, the love of paint. You know, paint first, subject second. Two different ways of doing it, right? And Van Gogh was in love with paint. He wasn't a great draftsman compared to all the other draftsmen at the time, right? But in love with paint, paint first, and then the subject second. And not useless, not useless. Repetitive, yes, super repetitive, but definitely not useless. I mean, if we look at Van Gogh, I'm going to bring up some Van Gogh. I'll bring up the larger version of that portrait. And I love a lot of the older Van Gogh too, which most people don't love because he wasn't so colorful. But I mean, this is thought out. Everything that's put down is very thought out. You can't tell me that this is useless. This is a Baroque way of painting, an understanding of opacity in the lighter areas where the highlights are, where the center lights are, and then thinking about how to adjust the half tones within a multitude of strokes. And then, okay, look, whiter, kind of warmer tones. And as soon as we cross into like half tones here and then in shadow, cooler tones. And then here he's thinking more about, oh, all of that redness that's around our eyes, things like this. This is so intentional. This is not useless. This is a deep understanding of form. Number one, look at this description of the nose. I mean, he trained like tremendously. I mean, one of the most prolific artists ever on the planet. And he knew at the time how that transition of light on forms were well before photography. Maybe he used photography. I'm not sure. One of my favorite paintings he's ever done was of the Postman. I think he did painted the Postman like multiple times though. And if you go on Wiki for Van Gogh and you look at the full history of his works, you can see how much drawing he did. Tremendous amount of draftsmanship and the progression of his work from his love of milieu with grays and tones and browns and mud into when he was in Arles, and it was all about color and brightness and just got caught by color at that point. Like this is some of the earlier ones here. I could talk about paintings forever. Here we go. I love this one. I always like this. Gorgeous. Just absolutely beautiful. I was reading Van Gogh, The Life. I read it years ago. And it was really funny because at one point in the book, they were talking about how some people, I guess, very sensitive individuals would see Van Gogh's art, his paintings hung, and like they would faint because they were just so crazy. Can you imagine? Like, I want to make a painting where people faint. They're like, oh. Dennis says, ooh, Ruiz. That's it. Thanks, man. You're welcome. Yeah, Juan Ruiz is fantastic. Okay. Finally going to get to the painting. I needed to talk about that. I wanted to talk about that because I'm thinking about it. And the one thing I'm looking at this painting, I was more happy with the previous paintings that I did because I was getting a little bit braver with the way I've applied paint. And I want to get further into that. The Magnus's uselessness of randomness. I want to get more to that, which is totally cool. I'm not making fun of you. Having that understanding of what you like and what you don't like is important. Even though we disagree, I love that people think in different ways. So you're totally cool, Magnus. Hopefully you're still here and I didn't annoy you too much. But no, let's have a discourse on why you think you hate Van Gogh and why I like Van Gogh. That would be fantastic. But I definitely want to get more into that more expressive way of painting. I've talked about it before. Let me mix up a color that I want to make here. Actually, we're going to start with somewhat of a gray in these brand new brushes, which is a little kind of crazy. I talked about this before in this way. I like doing this visually where there's, okay, we have the spectrum. We have this line, right? One end to the other. On this end, we're super, super detailed, hyper realism. On this end, we're very abstract, where, oh gosh, his name just left my brain. Oh, Rothko. We're Rothko. And then we can travel along this line like we're on a train. And then getting closer and closer to abstraction, to expressive work. And we can decide wherever we want to get off. And we're like, oh, I'm off at this stop. I'm still closer to exactness, but I have a little bit of expressiveness in there. And I love the idea of thinking that way, where we can move through this spectrum of art, this way of painting, and decide at what point we want to say, yeah, that's as expressive as I want to be. And then per painting, like one painting we could be way back here, one painting we can go all the way to Rothko. Doesn't matter. We don't have to be the same way. Magnus says, no way. It's just silly. Van Gogh. The Van Gogh is just as good, but what's the point of it? What's the point of it? That's a really good question. So we're asking, like, why did Van Gogh paint that way? Why did Van Gogh decide to paint in the way that he decided to paint? Is that what you mean? I think so. And man, if I could remember the majority of Van Gogh, the Life book, I would be able to give you a deeper understanding of the points or the reasoning behind it. But I'm going to do a very straight line here. I could get into the point of Van Gogh, but I don't think that really matters. Like, what's the point of me painting this way, right? Why do I love more expressive work than hyper detailed work? I don't think I could tell anybody the point of it. It's just a preference. It's just where I feel that this is more interesting than that. There could be, in a lot of my work, when I'm painting something, there could be, and actually most often there is, a deeper understanding for the narrative more than the subject. What do I mean by that? You just drew a few good faces then on the palette. Oh, like the abstraction of that? I see what you mean there. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Magnus. If you wanted to describe a courageous line, let's say you had charcoal and you wanted to make a line that looks courageous, what would that line look like? If you wanted to make a color that's happy, that feels happy or sad or contemplative, what would that color look like? Okay. And you're probably like going, what kind of question is that? What kind of weird question is this? Well, these are the concerns that a lot of these artists are getting into. Okay. At the very beginning of art, it was more like, hey, I want to paint this portrait. I want to keep an account of history, right? And I need something to say that it looks like this person because they're a king or a queen, and that's what it is, right? It's all about trying to make something look like what it looks like in person in life, right? And that's before photography. because the big thing was, oh man, how do you make that horse look like a horse in painting? How do you do that? And so they're thinking about that a lot. And then all of a sudden photography comes in and they're like, guess what, guys? In like a few minutes or a few hours, of developing that film, I have a perfect looking horse exactly the way it looks in black and white. Um, and guess what? All the portrait artists, you can just, we don't need you anymore, you know, because the photograph can do it with a lot better fidelity than you can and a lot faster. So we really don't need you. So along comes artists like Monet, Van Gogh, Sorolla, John Singer Sargent, Mary Cassatt, these beautiful, amazing artists. And they're like, okay, we don't need to worry about trying to make things look like what, they need to look like in person. Like that's done. The camera's done that. We can get into that somewhat, but I want to paint more of what this building feels like in direct sun, right? So we're getting more into emotion, feeling, these kind of nebulous ideas where the exact representation of the subject matter is not going to express that emotion well enough. And then we take that further and further and further all the way to the 1900s and you get Rothko, right? Or Pollock. It's because it's imaginative. There is, imagination that's involved in some of this, but I think most of what I'm talking about is for artists that had concerns beyond just representing what they see. And it was more emotional, more impressionistic, right? That's where that word comes from, because for the Impressionists, they did their show, right, back in 1800s. And a person that wrote about it was denigrating them and said it's not really the thing. It's just an impression of what they're trying to do. And they're like, yes, that's exactly it. You got it right. Trying to make fun of us, but we're going to take that and we're going to use it. Does it take imagination? I don't know. I think we get into a concern of, like, let's say, well, this painting here, this is a person that is dealing with cancer. Okay. I'm not going to tell you who this person is because they are a friend of mine. Okay. And so they're dealing with some strong emotions. Okay. And the idea was, I want you to use your hands, not your words, your hands to describe on your part of the body, like the emotion that you feel about that part of your body. How do you do that in paint? This is what we're talking about. It's beyond, oh, I just want to represent the face or represent the body, which is hard enough, I just want to paint it how it is, and more into what is this person feeling and how do I express that in my paint? And those are questions that I can't answer yet, and I'm trying to answer as I'm doing this. There's a Greek god on the right. It's kind of like when you look at clouds or you look at a Jackson Pollock, right? And you can say, oh, look, I see a teapot or something like that. And we can do that. Like if you have that kind of mental way of looking at things where it has to represent something, you can look for in the abstraction, like these little bits and bobs. But I think it's a very simplistic way of thinking. I think there's complexity there that we're missing if we do that. It's much like when, and I used to do this myself years and years ago when I didn't know as much. We go into a gallery, a contemporary gallery, and we see a painting and we say, oh man, a 4-year-old could have done that. In most instances, when we look at abstract work, we could think that, and we'd be completely wrong because it's all about mark making. And 4-year-olds or young people that haven't trained for years do not have that ability to make marks as beautiful as some abstract artists out there. I think it's along the same lines. It's an unwillingness to dive into something beyond just the representation of it. And it's subjective. It's 100% subjective. You could say Pollock is awful. I hate Jackson Pollock. I hate Van Gogh. I think he's awful too, but I love this person. And you know what? You're right. That's how you feel. And that's great. Hey, Matthew, welcome. I haven't heard from you in a while. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. I would like something that isn't me, Magnus says. It looks like something I didn't draw. There's nothing really emotional about chopping someone's head off. It's just disgusting. Oh, are you thinking about the beheading of Holofernes by maybe... Oh, just left my brain. Come on. One of the best artists on the planet. Velasquez? It looks like a chicken with a squirrel tail. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're listening to me, Magnus. I'm not sure. Now, I think what you need, I think what might help you, if you're willing to, is to put aside some of the, what's the word for it? Or to embrace, okay, I don't like this, to embrace that and go, you know what? I don't like this. Why don't I like this? And think about it in that way. And then also look at some history of some of the paintings that you hate the most. Like, I didn't like Rothko or Jackson Pollock until I did some research on what they were trying to do. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? I would probably end up doing something similar to Rothko was trying to, and this is a very simplistic interpretation of Rothko, because I'm sure he wasn't all of this, right? It was more than that in multiple ways. But what I've heard Rothko was trying to do was about that feeling in music that you get where you hear a song and you get goosebumps like right away and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Like you just want to move or express yourself. There's this instantaneous emotion that we feel with music. And I know you guys have felt that. Everyone listening to me has felt that, right? And Rothko was like, how can I get that in my images? And that led him to big blocks of color. Big, huge blocks of color. I'm not sure about Jackson Pollock. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, it was abstract expressionism. I think he was trying to simplify the art down into like a physical expression, which is really interesting. And at the same time, making just interesting paintings. Everyone sees something different when they see Mark Rothko. Yeah. And I would agree with that. It is like clouds and like these nebulous things where there's an opening up of the painting where it invites the person in. It says, I'm not trying to be anything specific. I want you to come into this realm and I want you to bring your own sensibilities and who you are. Right. And feel what you feel within it. And I think that's wonderful. That's what I enjoy most about, and that's the paintings that I look at the most, is because they open up and they invite you in and they say, hey, you're important too. I want to have a conversation with you in this painting. And to do that, it can't be exactly what it is. You have to depart, in my opinion, you have to depart from the imagery. I keep mentioning because we looked at them. I need to find some more like super realistic, hyper detail artist other than Michael James Smith. I mean, his art's beautiful, right? Gorgeous paintings. But it is what it is. I mean, he paints beautiful boats and forest scenes, and I look at it, I'm going, okay, it's a forest scene. Fantastic. You painted that beautifully. But I don't have any way into this painting. It is what it is. There's no conversation there. It's like, look at this beautiful forest scene that I painted. And like, okay, all right, next painting. Thank you. And hopefully that comes across not as like tremendously denigrating to Michael James Smith, but more amazing artist, yet not my cup of tea analogy. Matthew says, I've been very busy with work this month, but today is a light Friday. Good. I'm glad. Thank you for joining me. Joining us, not just me. It's all about me. I'm having a really good conversation with Magnus about expressiveness, about abstraction, about how we can love and hate it at the same time. And it's okay. But having a discourse surrounding it, I think is good. And Magnus says, no, I'm thinking about the woman who's got cancer. Which artist do I hate the most? I don't think I hate a single one. They are all good. What? Okay. That's fine. But you were kind of being negative to Van Gogh. I think like historically all these artists are amazing, right? Maybe you mean it that way. Like they are amazing. They have a historical importance. Would you buy a print of their work? Probably not, Totally understandable. Totally understandable. Okay. A little bit yellow in there, too yellow. I'm going to talk a little bit about this painting, what I'm trying to do here, okay? I don't really feel going to see the boats on the art gallery boring. About painting by accident, how it's done excellent by an 8-year-old. Okay. So the one thing I want to do is I want to darken up this whole area here. I want a separation between, you see these values here, they get a bit darker. It is darker here in this cheek because I put one stroke yesterday before I finished there to kind of feel how that darkness was, like the lower value. And it's closer to the reference, definitely. But I also like this idea of parentheses, bookends, value bookend here and a darker value bookend here. And it's kind of surrounding the important area, this painting, right? The other thing I want to do is I may lighten up this shadow that's coming from the glasses there down. Bring in some information, subtle information into it so it doesn't feel like a scar painted and it doesn't compete with this scar here. I want this to set on its own. I want that to be important. And I think what'll help with that is darkening up here and bringing some of these darker values up here so that this doesn't look so high contrast and out of place. But I'm thinking about these values. That's not bad. Maybe a little bit lighter, just a tiny bit lighter. Still on the cool side, so I'm adding white to get it a little bit lighter. I mean, one thing I really like with painting is that play between your subject, the realism of your subject, and the simplistic way of possibly painting it. And I've talked about this before multiple times. Trees are a wonderful thing to paint. The trees ask of every artist instantly to simplify. When you look at a tree, And some artists look at it and say, I'm going to paint every single leaf. And then other artists say, heck no, I'm not going to paint every single leaf. Um, I like how you said that. Magnus says that purple shadow on the cheek is amazing, done in one stroke. And then I just went over it. Oops. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it, but I totally covered it up. But I love how trees, when you go to them, there's an interpretation. It asks for interpretation. And we can choose to interpret simply or complexly, however we decide to paint it. And that happens with everything that we do. We can decide to come into this cheek here and this neck and paint it with tremendous complexity. I could get out like the smallest, tiniest brush and make sure that all the little indications, if I zoom in here, like there's hairs that are on that cheek, there's different textures, there's like a million little bits of information on that cheek that I can get into with like super small brushes if I choose to, right? But there's also a way of moving through this that I'm trying to find that could explain it simply and think not only about the cheek itself and all of its texture and its value and its color and things like this, but also be paint at the same time. It's paint, maybe even paint first, right? Could it be paint first and then a cheek after that? It reminds me of I was in TAM, Tacoma Art Museum in Tacoma, Washington. And they had a landscape by Clyde Aspevig, Aspevig, I think is how you spell his name. Clyde Aspevig. Beautiful landscape of a mountain. I think it was Mount Rainier, which is out there in Washington. And 30 feet away, it was a beautiful mountain with the, light side, dark side, the blues of the glacier and the snow on the mountain. 3 feet away, it devolved into nothing but brushwork. It was nothing but brushwork. And we were entranced by the simplicity of it, the simplicity that came together with distance and created something beautiful. Oh, no. It was I didn't like that brushstroke. I'm going to try it again. A little bit more confidently. I'm painting very thinly here. Just taking the brush and man, that one went too far down. I'm taking the brush and just kind of scraping it, sliding it over the top of the paint that's already down, which is almost set. It feels a little tacky. It's kind of set. And just scraping that paint off a little bit. Scraping it off the brush, to be exact, not scraping it off the paper. There's a subtlety there. There's a blending that happens, but not like a blending like right here where I'm blending two, areas of paint together. It's more like you put enough of those type of strokes. You see that stroke on my palette? Over your painting where it's very subtle and you can get a blending of things. The really bad example of it right there. More and more over. So you get kind of a blending idea. Maybe that's not the best example on my palette. Right here, I want this to kind of blend in a little bit, but I'm not going to blend that paint because this paint is pretty much dry. It's going to be like a scumble over the top, but within one stroke or 2 strokes or 5 strokes. Now I'm thinking about the shadow. I really have to pull that down in value. Yeah, I'm departing away. Here you go, Magnus. And everyone here. God's being getting his knife out on her neck. Okay, not sure what you're talking about there, dude. Hey, Omar, welcome. Did I check the link? Yes, thank you so much. I sent you an email back on that. That artist, her name left my brain, on YouTube, does all these little small videos on different like techniques for painting in certain ways. Really fun. I really like her. No nonsense, older lady, just says, you know what, this is how you paint the surf, and just goes for it. I like it. So this brushstroke here of the shadow that's being cast from the glasses, it's definitely, you know, on the reference, right? But it's competing because it's high contrast, you know, this dark shadow shape on super light. This high contrast is there, plus it's very sharp, it's line. It's competing with my focal point. Just like the glasses up here are doing the same thing. So what am I going to do? I'm going to remove that contrast. I'm going to bring back the light here. I'm only going to barely indicate the shadow shape. I'm departing away from the image, away from the reference, intentionally to help, hopefully, support the narrative of the painting in a way that I think would be a bit better. And I'm doing that too exactly. I just need to just over the whole thing. Yeah. I was being too fiddly with it. It's not quite there yet. How does that look? No, it's not there. It's not there. And these brushes, I like them, but they're a little less stiff than I want. Darn it. See, that's the problem with like buying brushes online. It's like buying shoes online or clothes online. Like the return aspect of them is going to be a big possibility. So not really liking those brushes too much, and I'm not really liking all of this yet. It feels too worked. It feels too overstated. It feels yeah, just overworked. There's too much to it. How much can we scrape back? Let's see. There's a bit of bravery to this, you know? Where we go into our painting and I think I was talking about this yesterday. Sometimes we have to risk destroying everything that we've already done to get to a place in the painting that will arrive at what we really need. I'm not going to leave this. I'm just scraping it all out. But the one thing that I want to show you guys is look how intense that is. That intense color. Isn't it beautiful? You can only get that with like scraping, like having just like paint that's kind of soaked into the surface and then scraping down, having the white show through. It gets so intense. It's a beautiful glow, especially right next to here. How a little bit of that kind of this paint is still there and it goes from darker to that intense light. You can see like that intensity like overshadows everything in the whole painting. Like now that's the total focus. But like I said, I'm not leaving this. It's just not working. It's not working. I think I'm going to scrape all the way to the neck. Maybe a bit into the muzzle of the face as well. And this paint is set. It's pretty much set. It's like it's like trying to scrape clay off. That's what's happening here. And yeah, there's a bit of bravery in this. It's like, okay, let's destroy what we put down. All these brush strokes. Thinking about finishing it today, but no, it needs to kind of move back. I need to kind of step back from it, pull some of this off, and rethink. Even right here on this brow, can I pull any of that back? No, can't. That's dry. That's all dry. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Chris says soap and isn't getting all the paint out of the brushes. Okay. But it doesn't. I want to address that. There's a level within that, okay? Soap isn't getting all the paint out of the brushes. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna, like, this brush used to be white. Okay, so there's some staining that's always gonna happen. It's fine. You get, 90% of all the paint out of the brush and it'll be okay. Keep a little bit of oil in there, like safflower oil, just a tiny bit of oil. It won't dry up. I don't think you need to worry about it. It's not like cleaning a sink in your bathroom or something like that, where it gets like just perfectly pristine white or something. No, there's going to be a little bit of that builds up over time. The brushes will fall apart. They will wear down, that kind of thing. Like here's a perfect example. Like these are brushes that I've used a lot. You see how colored they are? And this is what they look like at the beginning. These brushes still feel exactly the same as they did when I first bought them, even though they're a bit stained from paint from using them. So it's totally fine. Now, for example, if you go to clean a brush, right, and you have your white napkin or white paper towel, and you wipe it out, and paint is applied to there, you got too much paint in there, right? That'll dry and your brush will be like a stiff mess. Now I'm going to put this in I actually got sunflower oil this time. It's cheaper. So I'm going to wash this brush out in sunflower oil. Safflower oil is what I usually use. And then I'm going to do this. You can see that there's a bit of color there, but it's thin enough. I went 1, 2, 3, wiped it out. The brush is stained from multiple times using it, but that's more than enough. I got more than enough paint out of there where that brush is just going to sit in my can and not dry out. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Big area of paint, more paint. I need more white. I feel a little bit all over the place today because, we're talking about texture and things like that. And I want to bring some expressiveness into this painting where it needs it. And I kind of want to do that with these next few brush strokes. But at the same time, I think what this cheek needs is similar treatment to the neck, where it's pretty smooth. It has some smoothness to it. And I know how I got that. I got that from lots of paint, from well-mixed big chunks of paint. This is closer to a purple-ish color. So ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, right around in there. I know I'm going to bring in some yellow to pull that down in intensity as well, because it's not an intense purple, and some black to bring it down as well. Because I started with white, now I'm battling all that titanium white with all this other paint, and that's fine because I want to use a lot of paint. It's going to force me to bring in a lot of paint inside of that titanium white. So this paint, this brush will be thick with that paint, maybe a little bit warmer. Where am I at? So 2 blue. Need to warm it up a lot. A little bit more white and yellow. Still 2 blue. Oof, I don't like that bigger palette knife anymore. Okay, let's bring in some more Cad Red to warm it up even further. And then yellow ochre to warm it up even further. Where are we at now? No, still doesn't feel right. Going further with it. Yeah, that got it there. Okay. So starting with this darker value. Thick paint. Thick paint. Really throwing it down now. It's like, oh my God, what are you doing? What is that? Don't worry, it's okay. It's just paint. We can move it around. Now I'm going to take that color that I mixed up and I'm going to bring it closer to this lighter value. We're moving up the cheek. So it's getting a bit more warm. It's getting lighter, like a yellowish red, more orangey kind of warm. And we're going to do the same thing, thick paint. It's probably a little too dark. You know, I want this mode of painting right now where it's leaning further on the expressive idea. It's leaning further to simplicity rather than getting so caught up in the exactness. And if it doesn't look good, if I'm like, I really don't like that either, guess what? I'll just scrape it right back off again. We can do that. We have the skills to do this, okay? We can go crazy on the same painting that has these beautifully soft textures everywhere. We can throw down some super thick paint and then say, okay, that didn't work. Scrape it off and try it again. There's a bravery there, I think, that we need within our paintings. It's no different than, oh, I did this really beautiful drawing for this painting. Oh man, I don't want to screw it up. And so you get the little tiny brush and you're there and your butt is all clenched up and you're like so stiff and shaking because you're afraid to screw up the painting. Let it go. Let it go. You have a bunch of paintings left in you, Chris. You have a ton of paintings in you. And there's practical ways to help us out, like just in case we screw up. So you do a beautiful drawing in graphite of your painting, okay? Then you seal it with like a GAC 100 or put a PVA size over it that seals it. And then you go expressive and you're like, yeah, I lost all of the drawing. Scrape it all down. You'll probably have a little hint of what that color that you just put down. But you can get back to where you were before. You prepare for that. You're like, I'm going to be expressive here, but I'm also going to have a parachute. I'm going to jump out of this plane, as in painting terms, but I'm still going to jump out with a parachute, right? We can do that. We can have that practicality within it. Or we can just say, you know what? No, I'm going to be even more brave than that, Chris. I'm going to paint on raw oil painting paper, and it's going to soak up every little stroke I put down, and I'm just going to go super expressive and have a bunch of fun, and it's going to make a mess. And then afterwards, I'm going to learn from it and see, you know, what was good about it, what wasn't. We can do that too. I like both ways of doing, we just have to decide how it works for what painting. I think more of what it is I am looking at all those paintings and all those different ways of applying paint and texture. I'm a bit more influenced by that today. And there's yeah, I keep going back to that word bravery. There is that braveness that I want. Like, I was doing life drawing and I was influenced by Scott Connery and these like simple, oof, that's too bright, too intense. Simple one color, like black on white canvas, putting down an indication of the figure that was in front of me in very simple ways. They didn't turn out so good. I have them on my daily art on my website. But it was a wonderful learning opportunity just to sit there and go, could I do this whole head in one stroke? The reason why I moved to the ear here, you're probably like, okay, he put down a bunch of craziness on the chin, and now he's over to the ear. I felt an kind of incongruence with the ear over here, and I want to get a little bit of that established, like some simple ideas with that ear, because I think it's relational not only to the face on this side, but my focal point and everything else. It's almost like a different painter is here and a different painter is up there. I kind of like that. We can be different painters every single day. We can do 20 different styles on the same painting if we want to. There's no rules. There's no rules in this art thing. We just express ourselves and do the best we can. Constantly like socializing my movement through this art thing of what it is. And socializing that I really don't know exactly who I am yet, but I'm trying to figure that out. I love that. I love that we can move through that. That needs to be a bit better. So, bam, just do it. Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, I did not put it on Do Not Disturb. Magnus says, we need to brave when we paint. Be brave when we paint, because we all get our butts kicked. Yes. One stroke looks better. It looks figurative. Figurative. I like that word. Figurative. Yes. It's hard to be brave when you paint, though. It is. I get it. I totally get it. There's some things I'm like, oh, this needs to look like this way as soon as I put it down. And then I put it down and it's like, oh, it didn't do it. Because maybe it's, wet into wet. And if it doesn't go down right, you have to scrape off everything you did. And then, there's a bravery within that, being like, okay, I'm going to try really hard to put this down right. But if it doesn't, I'll scrape it off. That's too dark. I do like what kind of light touch these brushes have, though. There's a softness within them that's really nice. I think the cheaper brushes that I have a little bit more texture to them, which is nice, but now I have another gear I can kind of switch into with these brushes. Okay, I need expressive strokes, but a little bit softer maybe. Or if I need to just like barely touch, oof, I don't like that stroke. If I just need to just barely touch the canvas in some way. I have to try these crazy long brushes a couple times. Man, it's like I'm not even touching the paint. Look how long that is. It's ridiculous. Like, how am I going to mix up paint? It's just going to hit the paint. Let's try. Oh, it's just at the end, and I mean, it's like trying to move a stone with a feather. It just it's not there. It's not happening. Yeah. Like I always say, it's not just the brush. It's the paint, it's the viscosity of the paint and the surface you're working on. Let me see what this looks like when I put it down. This might be a beautiful brush for blending what's already down, though. Not for mixing up paint and putting it down thickly. Definitely not this brush. Yeah, it has a wonderful softness to it. It's another thing I say multiple times. Gosh, I say everything multiple times. I'm just going to stop saying that I say things multiple times. Like everything's brand new here. Um, there could be, like when we look at the specifics of a brush or a paint or, a palette or a canvas or paper, whatever, it has its properties to it. And we could say, I hate those properties. I don't like the way this works because of X, Y, and Z. But those properties, not so good in this one moment that you're speaking about, but perfect for other moments. So that super soft brush is not for mixing up really big, thick chunks of paint and putting it down, but for very subtle edge adjustment on paint that's already down, that brush is perfect for it. So understanding that, like, it could be both. It could be bad, yet that's good for a certain thing, right? Don't just throw a brush away or a paint away because it doesn't work in a certain situation. Which, I'm thinking about all of that gambling that I gave away. At some point, I'm going to regret it because I'm like, man, I really need very thick paint for this painting. A painting will come up and I need gambling. And I'm not going to go out and buy gambling. Maybe I'll let paint sit on my palette for a day or two and thicken up before I use it. That's also a possibility. Dried paint, you know? Who would have thunk? Like you go and you're like, oh, dried paint's no good. Is it? Maybe you need it for this particular way of painting. Maybe you need it to describe this particular narrative in a certain way. Feels a bit too purple. I mean, compared with my reference, it is too close to violet there. But I'm not going to worry about it. I think the value is not the important thing there. Or I'm sorry, the color, the temperature and the hue is not important there. I think what's important is that value and the way that the paint is applied. I feel like it needs to be this barrier to the face to keep someone down there. It's not there yet. It's not there yet. I like that it got more expressive, that it got more, and what's the word for it? More definite. Like it wasn't overworked. It doesn't feel as overworked now. Like it's trying to do something specifically. But it's still, I don't know. I need to try and figure that out. Oh, I'm pulling that off. Ah, that did not work. Soften that out way too much. It lost that interesting quality like the ear has. It's just this blank area, this like smooth area of the side of the face going into a chin. It's not interesting enough. It's just not doing it for me. So annoying. I really like the look of that though. I know it's incongruent with what is happening here, what I need to happen here. But honestly, I don't mind the understanding what I just did there and using it for a different painting. Maybe doing an entire painting simply and then scraping it all the way down and then repainting it again and leaving some of this. I don't think this painting is for that, but an interesting idea, I think. Just so many variables today could be, causing issues. The different brushes I'm trying, being affected by all the other paintings, thinking about texture. I didn't like that I scraped off too much of this lighter area because I did like that it was showing through some of the paper, but I brought that value up a little bit too much. So pushing it back again. And then I want a better transition between that lighter bottom side of the chin and the darker upper side of the chin. Yeah, that feels better right there. Definitely. I think what I'm going to do, I need to put out more black. I'm getting lazy. How many of us do that where we're just like, oh, used up all the black. Let me just sit there and mine into this as much as I can. Get little tiny bits of black out. And then the paint on our canvas gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And we start pushing it around and pushing it around. Stop being lazy, Chris. Put out the paint. You need it. Don't worry, it's not going to dry overnight. Okay, let's think about, I'm going to move through this chin from here all the way through it. And now I'm going to think a little bit more structurally. I'm going to think a little bit differently. Rather than big expressiveness, I'm going to try and have some of that smaller expressiveness, but I'm thinking structurally. I'm thinking, what do I mean by that? Like how this lip turns under and goes back into the skull a little bit, and then the chin comes out. We have this like concave portion under the lip there, concave from the corner of the lips there as well, then comes out into the cheek, and then we have this movement where the cheek up here is out and then concave in and out again, thinking about the undulation of form through space, structural building of those forms, and make them feel as if they're moving through space that way. So within that is a way of working where you can I feel like I can take this big expanse of like flat area and make it a little bit more interesting when I'm thinking about the undulation of structure. and do some different paint work within it that makes it a little bit more interesting and less like this just big area of paint, big area of nothing. I think, one of the shortcomings of my ability is how to treat those bigger areas where it's just there's nothing going on, yet keeping them interesting, right? I don't know how to do that really well yet. I don't know how to do that really well. And I always put yet at the end of those statements because that's important. Because I'm going to work on it and I'm going to get there one day. Not going to be tomorrow. I'll tell you that. Dennis says, my problem is not only the fear, but the fact that I'm too hard on myself and get really discouraged when something's not going right. Yeah. I mean, I feel that. The one thing that I always talk about when we talk about the emotional processes that we go through when we're painting, a lot of artists just don't even touch it. They're like, oh, I don't have a PhD and I don't want to get sued, so let's not talk about it. But no, it's a huge part of the painting process, like our brain getting into this, getting in the way sometimes, not getting in the way, being how we are, how we feel. And I always talk about like the common humanity is the very first thing that I go to when we talk about the fear of screwing up or imposter syndrome, all of these difficult things to talk about. Fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. There's always a common humanity. So think about that first, or not think about it, but I'll let you know. I feel like that a lot. Let me tell you a story. I think I told this before, but I'm going to tell it again because there's different people on here and someone else could benefit from it. So, years and years ago, I worked at SeaWorld in Florida as a caricature artist. And before I did that, I was one of those artists, and I think a lot of us start out this way where we're embarrassed to show our artwork. And so we're painting and drawing, and we're like, oh, don't look at it. Don't look at it yet. Maybe after I'm done, I'll show it to you. And so there's that difficulty of sharing, right? And we get into that. This is like the beginning of imposter syndrome, right? Where we don't feel like we're worthy, even though we're good enough. Okay. Um, and so I wanted to get a job in art. I had been doing murals for a living and in my own business, that kind of thing. And they had a caricature position open up at SeaWorld, and I was like, okay, let's try this. Let's go for it. How bad could it be? So they looked at my artwork and they're like, yeah, you haven't done a lot of caricatures because I never have, but they're like, you're good enough. You can get the hang of it. And I think I interviewed once and, I was drawing the CEO guy, the guy that owned the business. And that's how I got the job. And that wasn't too bad because, well, no, it was kind of bad. If I remember correctly, it was where I went into the park, into SeaWorld. There's a million people walking behind you, looking at everything that you're painting and drawing. And I'm painting the CEO or drawing the CEO in a funny way. And he's giving me tips and things like that. And so here I am in a crowd of people. And he's like, yeah, so, shadow this person for a few days and then you're on your own after that. And then the first day I was on my own, it was like, hey, draw these kids of, this family of 4, right? And the kids sit down and you're there to make fun of them while their family is right behind you watching. I was so nervous. Oh my God. So nervous. Like I can't believe like I mean, it was probably a terrible drawing, but I think they bought it anyways, right? Felt bad for me or something like that. It's probably shaky lines everywhere. But after doing that for a few months, actually even a few weeks, boy, that got me over um, like that fear of showing my work. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best way to move through that fear, right? Where you introduce yourself to, like this gauntlet of awfulness to get you over a fear that you have. It's like, oh, I have a fear of swimming. Okay, let me just throw you into the pool. I mean, that could be a problem, right? We could really hurt ourselves, I have a fear of heights. Okay, fine. Let's just jump out of an airplane. No, thank you, right? That's a bit extreme. But there is a little truth in that, right? Is the more we do it and the more that we move through, and there's a practical way to move through paintings too, especially after they're done. The more we do it, the more we look at them and look at them for the positive and the negative and say, yeah, I really screwed that one up. Why did I screw up? Well, it's just this portion here I didn't really care for, because maybe I moved too quickly. Maybe I didn't have the skills for the drawing on that. Okay, I need to work on my drawing, need to work on this. But putting on this kind of hat, especially at the end of our paintings or even between, when I'm having trouble with painting something like this chin here, and removing ourselves away from it and thinking a little bit scientifically about it. This isn't a commentary on me as a painter and me as a person. If I screw up this painting and it looks freaking terrible, which it will to some people will hate it, some people will love it, what's important is if I like it or dislike it, right? But there's always that chance, but looking at it as in kind of like a scientific way, like putting on the lab coat instead of like the denigrating you're an awful person, but separating the results away from us as a person and saying, you know what? I see all of this information from this painting session or this painting itself, or even those few brushstrokes that I can improve upon or that I can change and I know that I'll get better with. So a little bit of that separation. Like I always have attachment to my paintings at the beginning. And then after they're done, I'm like, okay, get them out of the house. Let's sell these things. It's done. I'm on to the next one. And I think that's mainly because I pull in that kind of scientific lab coat approach at the end. All right, I learned what I could from that. I think I did some good things. I think I did some not so good things. Now it's time to move on to the next. I want to try that little piece of light that's on that chin again. Let's see. Let's see if we can get the shape of it. It's really like the beginning and the ending of it that needs to go down right. Nope. Not quite there. Too sharp on both sides, or at least the top side, it's too sharp. Let's use the super floppy brush for that. Hopefully that helps, Dennis. I mean, we all move through things a little bit differently, right? What I've realized from doing a lot of like personal development work, reading a lot of books, taking a lot of courses within that, and this is why I talk about this stuff all the time, is, one teacher, one person can say it one way, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't resonate. I don't understand what you're talking about. And then another person can say it the same thing, but in a different way. And you're like, oh, heck yeah, now I get it. And your life changes. So I try to speak to these things that are difficult in as many different ways as I can. So hopefully something resonates. Magnus says, there's a wild boar on the pallet. Oh, you see a wild boar. Okay. Thank you. Dennis says, I want it to be fun, not something that gets me down, you know? I totally understand. Yeah. I think we have to understand within that that it's not the painting that's getting you down, but it's the way that we think about the painting that's getting us down. What is that quote? If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Because, you know, it's us that makes up our own world around us. I mean, look at, you know, the political hemisphere in every single country. You'll have one person on one side and one person on the other, always and forever. There's always going to be a lot of heated debate politically. One person thinks this way is the best way, the other person thinks this way is the best way, and then a million people in between either agree or disagree. Another example is I like cool, cold weather. I love Washington State. It's gray a lot of times in the winter, and it's cool and a little bit rainy and damp. It's like a cave. And I'm like, oh, yes, my favorite weather. And I don't like the beach. I don't like, you know, intense sun. I do not like that. And I'm right for me, you know? It's the way that I move through this world and I see things, right? And it is right for me. And if you love the beach, that's right for you. That's fantastic. But I'm not there. Nope, not me. Is it very same as, you know, me and Magnus like disagreeing on abstraction versus realism, right? It's how we move through this world, how we visualize what's around us. You know, on the street in New York, there's a person walking right now that thinks that everything's fallen apart and it's the worst day on the planet. And right next to them is a person thinking the exact opposite. It's the best day ever and everything's beautiful. And they're both right. They both are moving through their world in a certain way. And so we can come into our paintings, we can come into the end of them, right? When we finish a session that either goes good or goes bad, and we can determine, we can decide how we want to feel about it. We can say, man, I hated that session. It was terrible. And I didn't do the things that I would like to have done. It didn't turn out as well as I would like to have turned out. And then we can be very down on ourselves and like, man, why am I even doing this? It's terrible. And I've done that so many times before where I'm like, why am I even on this stream? God, that painting session was awful. Oh, why is anybody watching me? This is ridiculous. Like, look at Nicholas Uribe. He's so good. And yet Nicholas Uribe has the same days, right? Same type of days. And then there's times when I do a bad painting and I'm like, oh, that was awful. But man, I learned so much there. Or I learned not to do that again. Okay, cool, fine. You know, this is wonderful. I get to do this every day. It's great. So understanding that we can decide how we're going to feel about something, that emotions don't have to rule us. It's our brain. And we can say, you know what, brain, that's not very helpful. Yeah, of course. I wish that painting session went better today or in a different direction. But you know what? I learned some things. Okay, let me get back on that horse and try it again. Yeah. Yeah, facing your fears head on. I think I'm missing comments, but I want to see. Oh, another person. Hi. How you doing? He says, good afternoon. They say good afternoon. Welcome. Yeah, face your fears head on. That's the best cure usually, you know? Yeah, like when you're in the moment, just like going for it and then understanding, like, that saying that I love, if you want to hit the game winning home run in the World Series, you also have to be willing to strike out. If you want that paint stroke to be very expressive and in the right place and perfectly here, you got to try and put it down. And if it doesn't work, scrape it off, try and put it down again. Scrape it off, put it down again, and keep going for it. I don't know. I like calling this thing a game. Like we're playing a game here. And that really pulls a lot of the, all of that pressure out of it, right? We don't just have one game in this, like one basketball game or bowling game. We went bowling not too long ago. It was so bowling is fun when you suck. I'm sorry, I suck at bowling. Everybody that was with us wasn't that good at bowling, and we had so much fun because it wasn't about like doing it perfectly or right. There was still some competitiveness there of like, oh, I'm gonna beat that person, or I'm top score right now. But then it was also fun because doing really bad and you can like, okay, I'm gonna sit on my butt and just like push the ball forward really slowly and see how close I can get to the pins without hitting them. Having fun in that way. So we show up to this art thing, treat it as a game, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna just throw some paint everywhere and see how it lands and just let it go. I've done 2 paintings now called Let It Go, where I just need to remind myself to let go. Stop being so grabbed onto it. Do you ever use glazing once you're finished with a painting, like maybe for putting in reflected light or something? No, I do it alla prima. I do it wet on wet. You don't have to wait till it's completely and utterly dry. Wait till it's set just a little bit, like almost a little tacky, like you can't touch it, like you would move it if you touch it, but use like a softer brush and you can lightly go into it. Glazing is a little bit more fragile, I feel, in some instances. Not only is there like a lot of time involved in glazing, you have to wait at least a week or two, or maybe even 6 to 12 months if you listen to what some people tell you before you glaze over your painting. But not only that, like the time frame involved, but if you try and do it on paint that isn't quite set enough, you'll start pulling up that paint underneath and it may turn out not looking the way you want it to look. So there's drying time that's really important in that. So you have to really kind of figure that out. But I like doing it like lighting up a color that's there, using what's already down, darkening up a color that's already there, using what's already down, and doing it within kind of an immediate kind of approach to it, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to try this brush again, and this might be terrible, but keep going back to that for some reason. It's not looking good. Years ago, and we're talking about glazing, if you look at the very first page of my gallery, well, not the first page, but the last page, the older work, you'll see figurative work that is really detailed. A lot of that was using a lot of medium to get a lot of transparency. That was the best thing about glazing, I would say, is like seeing a dry color that's set and being able to just get that to show through and just like some subtleties on top of it, very subtle movements. That was a lot easier than trying to blend when the paint was wet, getting a very soft brush, because I've done that before. You go out to like a beauty store and get one of those brushes where they put on like foundation not mascara. I was wanting to say mascara, but they're really fluffy brushes, and using those to like soften out areas. Um, that's one way of doing it. But I always, if I wanted to paint something within that kind of softness, I would probably go back or try glazing again, maybe. Because you not only do you get the color that was below that you're painting over, and you get some transparency within that, which will add like a tremendous amount of interest, or can add a lot of interest into what you're working on. But you can make just really small movements, either in saturation, hue, value. I think Doobie does a lot of glazing, if I remember correctly. No, I'll miss more comments. It did help, thanks. Good. Yeah, paint more, Dennis. We want to see more paintings. Share those paintings too. Hey, Chris, did you say another person? Yes, I said, well, good afternoon to you too. Good afternoon. Your painting is reading better since you scraped. Yeah, thank you. I think so too. I think it needed that. It really did. I could be blithe is the word for it. I could be like kind of uncaring and kind of I'm looking for a particular word, but I can't think of it. But nonchalant, flippant. There you go, flippant. I could be flippant and tell you this: that the most important paintings I have are the ones that I screwed up, right? And it does that kind of statement, although it has some truth to it, a lot of truth to it. And I've said this before. It's it is a little bit flippant, where it disregards this idea of like how difficult it is to make a good painting, how difficult it is for your psyche to make a good painting. But I like saying it because it, as a reminder to me, and hopefully helpfulness to other people, of yeah, you're going to do more bad paintings. You not only do you have a bunch of good paintings in you, Chris, but you have a lot of bad paintings left in you too. But you have a lot of paintings left in you in general. Unless I die tomorrow, then I wouldn't care anyways. But a little bit of negativity, like just thrown in there really quickly. Good job, Chris. But as like a reminder to myself, like, yeah, they're not going to look that good sometimes. It's going to happen. You're going to struggle with some. They're going to take like 14, 15 days longer than you want. But on the other end of them, if you treat them like with respect and you go, okay, yeah, I really don't like that painting. This is why. Let's dive into it. Let's get the critical hat on and figure out why I don't like it. Number one. Actually, number one would be, what did I do well within it? I always like asking that question first. Okay, every painting's got to have something good. I mean, heck, just doing the painting, just getting a painting done, putting the work in, showing up. I mean, that's huge. It's huge for a lot of people. A lot of people, it's like find it difficult to get out of bed in the morning, let alone make a painting. Good job, Chris. You made the painting. It wasn't a great painting, but it was you made it. But looking at what we've done well, what needs work, and how we can use that to improve on the next one. So important. You see how that kind of gets into the scientific mindset too? Where you're like, okay, let's put on the science cap and let's read this as a bunch of information on how we can do better next time. Scientists don't look at the results of their tests as a reflection on what kind of person that they are, And we have to make sure that we separate these paintings from us in that way. Make a bad painting, it doesn't make you a bad artist. I mean, I still have bad paintings, bad painting sessions, bad painting days, bad painting weeks. Uh, but then I look back at other artwork, and me and a friend of mine were talking about this once. Like we look at older work, and who has thought about this before? I know multiple of you are out there. We look at our older work and we say, I don't think I can paint that good anymore. Boy, that was like the best painting I ever did, and it's been downhill from there. That's detrimental. Oh, that never feels good. You know, that is a emotional state that I find difficult to work through, because there are paintings I've done in the past that I look at and I'm like, oof, could I do that again? That good? I don't think so. But I get up, I look forward to the next session. I'm like, okay, I know I can do something good here. I can attempt to make progress on this. I want this to be a bit darker. Is that too dark now? Quickly, quickly, fast, simply. Too far. Damn it. Okay, that helped it. Getting that right shape in. Okay. One thing I do a lot with my paintings that maybe you guys have noticed. Have you noticed? I'm going to point it out. You see, I always paint one shape over the other. Okay. So this hair and the neck, that stroke for that hair went down too far. Now I need to recover that kind of edge of the neck. So I'm going to cut back into that paint stroke that I just made. Oops, it needs to be a little bit lighter, a little bit warmer. I'm going to cut back into that stroke that I just made with the positive of this neck, the foreground or, background. And I say cutting into it because that's kind of what you're doing. You're shaping the paint that was already down with what's next to it, if that makes sense. I'm off Santa's list. Uh-oh. It's not good. Well, Christmas is pretty far away. I'm sure you have all kinds of opportunities to get back on the list. Okay. All right, we're going to. Whoa, I've been painting for a while. Actually, I've been talking longer than, or more than I've been painting, honestly. The chin looks better, definitely. What's a bit unresolved is this value here. It just kind of ends abruptly. It needs some more softness within there. So let's get out one of my newer brushes that I just got. I want to find that value again. That's the problem with moving over here and then going up there, then back there, then all over the place. I lose where this was on my palette. Now I need to find it again. Hopefully it's this value. Yeah, that's pretty close. So use one of these softer brushes to pull some of that in. And I'm going to keep this soft right here. I like the softness now. For some reason, I didn't like it a moment ago. Just barely touching the canvas, the paint, I paint on paper, but I call it canvas all the time. barely touching the surface. The surface, there you go. Oof, no, needs to be a lot lighter. I'm going to go for the shadow of the glasses on the face. I'm going to attempt it again. I don't know why I'm doing it now. I should resolve what's below it first. Yeah, I need to resolve what's below it first. I was wanting to stop right now, but I want to get resolution within this. And this happens several times with me on paintings where I'm struggling on something, and it's like, oh, I've worked, for a couple hours. It's about time to finish. Maybe I'm a little bit tired or whatever. And if I'm tired, it's a really good reason to stop, especially if your brain's not like firing on all cylinders. You didn't sleep well or whatever mayhap, right? Because we tend to make bad decisions when our brain isn't up to speed on things. But then there's moments where I'm like, okay, you've scraped it off twice, like right here. I want to end this session with some resolution, even if it's resolved in like not a right way, but not quite there. But getting to a point where I put in the rest of this cheek with very wet paint and then come back tomorrow and see if it's good or not. See if the painting fairy will come in the night and make the painting look better. Yeah, just rely upon, there you go, Dennis. Rely upon the painting fairy. It's okay. Just let it all go. Another person says, I started painting a Mexican masked wrestler, luchador. Fantastic. I haven't had much, so our energy after work this week. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a mental energy that's there. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to push you on this. Another person, what can you do? Oh, I'm tired. Been working all day. I don't feel like it. I know that. I know that feeling. I've known it thousands of days. Literally thousands of days. I'm not joking. So I back that up with, okay, what can I do? Let me work on this painting for 15, 20 minutes. Or if your setup takes too long to get set up for painting, let me just do a sketch. You know what? I'm going to paint or draw my feet. Yeah. What can you do? And then after you do that, after you're like, all right, I'm going to push myself through this to make a terrible drawing just to do something, which is important. That habit is so important. A lot of artists like get into this thing and they're like, what's the point of doing anything unless you make something good? And that is such a toxic way of thinking about painting. Number one, if you think that way, it doesn't allow you to ever do anything bad. And if you do, oh my gosh, it means you feel like you want to quit, right? Remove that pressure. The most important thing, and I say most important all the time, but this is probably, the foundational approach for everything I do. Getting to it every day, the habit of it, of painting, of drawing, of doing something, showing up and doing what you can. That's the foundation of my 4,000, what is it? 4,935 days in a row. What can I do? 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. But keep that habit going because it doesn't matter how good the painting is, how good the drawing is. What matters most is that you still have the habit, that you still push through it, brought in a little bit of discipline. Ooh, that word we don't like, discipline. And got it done and then celebrated afterwards. Yes. I've been waiting for the ferry for quite a while. Yes. Gonna what I can do tonight. Gonna do what I can do tonight. Good. How do you get the hands so bright? Oh, really good question. So this is the white of the paper. Okay. And that's not it. Okay. That's not the only thing. What you want to do is have that intense color right before it goes into shadow or any other value. Like I could probably put it in more places. So this like super intense yellow here next to the white, that's what makes it look really bright. It's not the white itself, but what's next to it. We talk a lot about the relative nature of color and value and edges and all of the fundamentals of art. That's a really good question. It shows that right there. It's not about what you're painting, but what's next to it. The same is true within drawing. Like sometimes you could be looking at, an arm or a leg or a head, and you say, wow, the head feels too long, like vertically. So I need to shorten it up. But you have to think on alternates as well within drawing. Not just like about shortening the head because it feels too long, but maybe widening the sides of the head out because relatively it feels too long because of the width, right? So maybe the easier route is not to elongate or squish, the height of it, but to make it a bit wider. So you get the same difference within them. No, stop it with that stupid brush. And the same thing was with value. Like, man, my painting is way too dark, right? Or maybe that's not a good example. Like the relative of it, like, wow, that looks way too bright. Well, because maybe there's nothing but gray next to it, maybe brighten up things that are around it. Or man, that's way too gray right there. Maybe it's because what's around it is too bright, too intense. So it's all relative. Yeah, it's all about your relatives. We talk about the relatives a lot. That really helps. That just really impasto white there. That really helped. I don't think I'm going to put the, see that subtlety of shadow that's there? Kind of hinting at the glasses. I don't think I'm going to put it in. And in fact, I'm going to bring down the value in these glasses tremendously. Even further than that. Oof. But try and do it in a way that's a little bit better. A little bit more exact there, Chris. Or maybe not. I'm trying to be really expressive at the same time, like a little bit of not caring and caring at the same time. I don't know. That's how I'm moving through this expressive way of painting. So what if I screwed up? I'll just do another painting. That's another reason why I like working small, you know? It only takes me 3 days to screw up a painting. Then I'm on to the next one. Screw that one up too. Isn't that great? It's a good way of thinking about it. If you paint smaller, iterative like, fail fast, fail forward, fail often, right? That was like some kind of business terminology I heard years and years ago. I think it's with agile processes. Okay, I'm not stopping. Those few strokes that I put in, I'm like, whoa, I'm getting close to the end. It was like all of a sudden I've arrived and I'm not sure how. Like I sense the end of this painting. That feels good. And I don't like saying I'm not sure how as well. That's like an indication that, you know, I had my brain off and I was just painting without any thought. No, I like moving through this thing and going, oh, I know exactly what I did wrong there or what I did right. Because if we don't know what we did right, how can we repeat it and do it right the second time? If we don't know what we did wrong, how can we avoid it and not do it the next time? You know, having that deeper understanding. I want a lighter value right where that eyelid is hitting, getting a little bit of light. And the glasses interrupt it. But you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to put that light here over the glasses. I'm going to be cheeky on that one. A little cheeky move. And I'm not British, but I like that word. So I should have a blank canvas for the hand and put some yellow in. Yes. It's all relative, right? The blank canvas is a certain white that I wanted. It's like the brightest white I can get. I mean, straight ultramarine would get pretty close to that with that kind of yellow going into it. Or, you know, you could bring the ultramarine white down a little bit more and have that yellow a little bit darker, a little bit more intense. It's all relative. It's a relative value concern there. So, you can still get that kind of glow or that brightness with a like a little bit darker white that's there. It just depends on how the yellow moves as well. When I say move, I meant like in value, like how it moves a little bit darker. How are they relatively connected to each other with value? Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. I think that's a better answer than it depends. It depends on what's around it, definitely. Okay. Looking good. I'm liking this. Man, I went from I'm not sure about this painting. I put a few strokes down and I'm like, this feels really good. That feeling, you know, it feels good. Tuning into yourselves, to ourselves, where things feel good. It's very nebulous, right? It's a nebulous word. Hey, that feels good. What do you mean it feels good? I don't know. It just felt good putting those strokes down. It feels right. It feels accurate. It feels expressive, yet as accurate as it needs to be. It feels a little brave in some places. It's, I guess, to get into specifics within it, it's describing all the form within here enough, but not so much where it's pulling away from here. Maybe the lips are a little bit because there's so much detail there and some contrast within the nose. But it's especially within, you know, the frame of the eye socket here where there's some interesting strokes going in there. I like that. I think I need to describe a little bit more detail in some places here. A little bit more interest, but not in that value. Dead air. Chris isn't saying anything. He's really focusing. Okay. I need to put some indication of the rest of those glasses. I love that it's just very simple line, line, line in a few places to indicate, yes, there's glasses there. Are they important? No, they're not that important. Do I feel like I need to describe them to the nth degree? Like, because every little piece of metal of those glasses has like this highlight, this shadow, this midlight. I mean, they're chrome. I mean, if you've ever tried to paint chrome, oh my goodness. I avoid chrome like the plague. That's why I don't like painting cars. You could look at a chrome bumper for 2 years and still not get all the information that's in that. It's like, hey, let me paint something that reflects all of the world within it and distorts it in a different way. That sounds like fun. You know, I look at people that have painted cars really well and I'm like, you are a magician. You are crazy. And I would not invite you over for dinner because of your craziness. You just painted chrome. But heck yeah, it's amazing. Good job. Yeah, you have to be a little bit crazy to paint chrome and enjoy painting chrome. I'm sorry. That's an objective opinion. And of course I'm kidding. Of course I'm joking. It's like you look at these 18th century artists like American painters like Thomas Cole and he's like, "Oh, look at that tree. I'll paint all the leaves." Are you crazy? And then Thomas Cole's like, "Are you lazy?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm lazy. That's what it is. I don't want to do that. Don't want to do it." Bam, that little bit of light really tells me that the glasses are in the wrong place. It looks good. I really love that value there, but oh my God, it just said, hey, your glasses are wrong. Like right away. My goodness. Okay, let's paint over that. You guys didn't see that. No, it's not there. Not there. Look, I didn't screw up. I swear. And I'm not going to paint the glasses over again. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to adjust the glasses on the left side with this little mark to make it look like the perspective is right. Just moving them up a little bit. I think that's better. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay. You don't need to get better at drawing. You just need to fake it better. That's what we need. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. I'm getting tired from painting so much. I want to finish this painting though. I'm so close. As soon as I get this hair figured out and the ear, I think I'm good. The ear is pretty close. I really love how I really love what I do. Oh my gosh. Talk about pretentious thought there. Ugh. Well, I did put those down in a way that I enjoy. I have to say that. It feels good. Just simply these shadow shapes. Is it describing the ear exactly the way it is? No, I'll fix them up a little bit. I'll move some things around. But yeah, not too bad. Not too shabby. Happy with that. There's some times when I'm doing a painting and I'm like, this is going to be a tough stroke to put down. And I put it down, it goes down right. And man, it feels good. Man, it feels good. It's kind of like if you've ever played golf. I don't play golf anymore. My very first job I've ever had when I was a kid, child labor. I was like 16, had a job. I don't think I was supposed to be employed at that age. I think 18 I was supposed to be employed, but not 16. But it was on a golf course and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. We got into a lot of trouble doing some bad stuff. But anyway, we won't talk about that. Um when you're playing golf, like, and especially when you're up on the tee and you have to drive the ball, like you have your big club, the big driver. Um, there, most of the time, it feels like you have this chunky piece of crap, like metal thing on the end of a long stick. And at the very end of you swing, you hit this like huge rock and it shakes like your arm all the way up to your shoulder. And it's just like, oh, that felt like it does not feel right. You're like, ugh, what was that? And you have about a million of those or a few hundred, one of the two. And you're like, ugh, that felt terrible. And of course, the ball like ricochets off into the wrong direction or something. But then every now and then, when you play golf, you'll hit it just perfectly. And it's like the ball didn't even exist. And like you didn't even hit anything on the end of your club. It just passes through air. And then you look up at the end of the swing and the ball is like shooting perfectly straight forward down the fairway, exactly where you wanted it. And then you're like, oh, that's why I play this game. Yeah. And I really think that's why people play that game. Every now and then, when you're painting, you'll just have that perfect thing that just goes down exactly the way you wanted it. And you're like, oh, that's why I'm painting. Yes. Okay. I'm going to clean up the top of this ear with a palette knife. Now, I wonder if that ear is a little bit distracting. Ears are fun to paint. Honestly, the glasses look fine. Thank you, Dennis. Paint it till you fake it. Exactly. That's better than the photo. Thank you, Magnus. I appreciate it. That's actually really good. I'm glad you said that. Like, more than the photo, you know, better than the photo. That's what we're going for. Look at what I'm painting. I made it better. Right? That feels good. Thank you, Magnus. Appreciate that. Because it is different. I'm avoiding the earring. I'm not doing the earring. The earring is another piece of man-made sharp edges that I do not want to distract away from the neck. And see, even I don't like what I did there just now. Simple ear. Simplify that ear a bit more, Chris. Fix that shape a bit as well. See, it's like the underside of this ear, like where the neck is. I don't like that shape. It's a little bit more interesting, so I'm going to cut into it with the area behind it to shape that ear, the bottom piece of that ear just a little bit. And that works. Bam. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to mix up the brightest orange I can. This could be good or bad. There's this interesting, like very bright subsurface scattering on this ear. And yeah, it's, I'm putting this intense color, this super saturated color up here far away from my focal point, which is, going to attract some attention. But I can't stop myself. I just love that. I love the way it looks. I don't think it distracts too much. That's done. the hair is done. I did this one stroke of like light paint there, which is kind of a gray thing. And I wish I just left the paint there. Just try and scrape it out. Actually, I wish I could scrape this whole chunk back to white. I think that would be better. What I'm going to try is with this brush, because I know I can get a lot of the hairs within the brush to kind of show through. I mean, I am painting hair. Use the hairs of the brush to paint hair, right? Want to paint hair? Use something made out of hair. That's obvious. So see if I can get that lightened up a bit while still showing some of the hairs through. No, nope, 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 not happening. It's like someone looking over your shoulder going, nope, you suck. Nope, try again. Nope, still wrong. So unhelpful. That's my brain sometimes. Nope, 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 nope. Bad. No bueno. It was better with less. Better with less. And then now I can't scrape it back because that's dry. Actually. All right, I'm going to try something crazy. I'm going to get my wet wipes out. Baby wet wipes. Yay. It's the new craze for oil painting. You know, you need to remove some paint. Don't use your palette knife. Just soap. All right. Let's see how much this pulls off. See how far I can get back to the surface. Just the paper. And I'm really interested in, like, because there is some soapiness kind of in this wet wipe. And I'm really interested in, like, how that's going to affect subsequent paint layers. I'm really willing to sacrifice a whole painting for the scientific research behind this, right? Let's coat the surface with soap and then paint on top of it and see what happens to the paint layers on top of it. I think that would be a fun experiment. I'm going to do it right here. See what happens. So yeah, that's too bright. It kind of, you know, it's getting closer to that value up there, but it's not in the right hue range or anything. It's not there. I think ivory black with yellow ochre will get me closer to that. Is that the right value? Yeah, a little bit more yellow ochre. See, I want to describe the texture of this hair with as least amount of brushwork as possible. Oh, Jennifer Gennari, where are you? I need your help. I need to, like, channel her energy with painting hair. Ooh, that got it. It's all about how the stroke begins and ends. Like, how you're going to end it is important with this. Like a lifting up right at the end. So it kind of fades off. We did talk today in the beginning of this stream about texture, about the infinite ways of applying paint on your surface, and how in every painting, you know, depending on the object we're trying to paint, like what it is, like some kind of textural concern that we have, the difference between hair and the forehead, you know, texture changes, you know, the way that looks, you know, and how hair, you can kind of see through it right here. More of the head is kind of showing through. And getting those few strokes right are going to take a different way of putting paint down. A lot of times, you know, we just fall asleep and we're like, okay, this brush makes this stroke. Bam, 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 bam. Put it down. Stroke, stroke, stroke. And that's the type of stroke that that brush makes, and nothing else. And then we just kind of fall asleep, and you see it on paintings. It's like when someone is painting a scene of just flowers in a field, right? Like a whole bunch of flowers, a million flowers in a field, and they go bop, 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 just tapping flower, 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 flower. And it's like, no, stop, wake up, wake up, wake up. Group those flowers together. See the simplicity within it. How are the flowers themselves and their texture different from the foliage behind them? Think about that. Put it down the way it needs to be put down. Is these kind of concerns with how we paint and how each brushstrokes goes down that takes us to the next level of ourselves as painters, like our next level is I think for most of us within the waking up and really looking at things that we do and really thinking about it, bringing the attention that we need to every little moment within, you know, the texture of this hair. Am I painting every single little hair? Heck no, that's not the painter I am. So I'm thinking, how do I simplify this the way it needs to be simplified? Definitely not your finger. Don't touch it with your finger, Chris. You tried that, it didn't work. Don't touch it. It's getting there. It's getting there. It's not quite there. You know, when I talk about things like that are far away from our focal point, um, we don't want it to have elements like super saturation that will distract away from our focal point, or high contrast, or some incongruent color or hue that's completely far away from everything else on the painting, right? Because that would attract attention. It would attract away from our focal point. But at the same time, these things need to be done well enough so that their lack of information doesn't distract because it just doesn't look right, you know, whatever that means, right? So is it put down in a pretty good texture that looks good? Yeah, I think so. Does it distract away from a focal point? Nope, it doesn't. Okay, you're done. You're done. Speaking of done, I think I might be done. Let's look at it digitally. Long stream. No, don't do it. Are you talking about the soap on painting? Okay, I see this little moment that I want to get rid of. Let's blend it in. This little, oh, it's like a chunk out of the painting there, out of the surface. It's so funny how I can just move to the digital version and see like the problems right away. Where here, when I'm looking at it in person, like right up close and not departed away from it, I miss so many things. Like, I really want to bring in this moment. No, it needs to be a smaller brush. Where's my, okay, here you are. I want to bring in this moment where the eyelashes catch a little bit of that light. The value needs to be right on because I got one stroke at this, maybe 2 or 3. Nope. Lighter value. Okay. And what that calls for is a darker value underneath. Oof. Okay. I should have just put the darker value in first and then the eyelashes over it. No, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. But I do want to hint at a little, I brought some of it up here, that super bright yellow with the hands down here. I want some of that up there. It kind of speaks a little bit about what's happening down in the hands, like that same kind of idea up here. Man, I could go almost lemon yellow to get this. That's nice. That's fun. But I have to be careful with where I put it. Can't be too much. Can't be too much. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's enough. Just little tiny bits. All right. 1 second. I'll turn this 4K. Okay, now we get a few more pixels to look at. Not bad. Let's zoom in. Not bad. Not bad. I'm happy. There's a little bit of confusion here, but my brain is warring with this idea of touching it or not touching it because it's not too far in that mode where it's distracting. What I feel is distracting though is the sharpness of that nostril. I want to smooth down those edges a little bit. Just soften the edge. Doesn't have to be exact, just needs to be softer. Yeah. Better. And it's a little small moment that doesn't really make big differences anywhere, but I saw it, so I changed it. Yeah, I'm happy with it. I was talking about leaving the hair alone, but it looks okay. I know. Yeah. I wish it was more like I love these moments back here, like these initial, just like I'm just throwing in some hair, but it looks fine. Like there's something about those strokes that look so flippant and unthought out and expressive, but it describes everything all at once. That I just love. I love that aspect. I'm going to continue searching for that. Like how can I get to that? You just did nothing the entire video. I know. I just been sitting here chatting the whole time. What it is you're seeing me in a different room, and the real artist is in another room. And if I ever do a painting off stream or any session off stream, I hire someone to come in and actually paint it for me. A better artist. Yeah. I go into a trance and I evoke the better artist in me. That's what it is. Okay, yeah, I'm done with this painting. I think it looks good. I'm not going to worry about the nose rings. I know that this person may go, man, where's my nose rings? But nope. Nope. There's a lot that I would rather that I found some way to do this neck with a lot more like texture. If you see in their neck and the reference, there's a lot of variation within there. Some blues, some oranges, some yellows, some greens. There's, kind of a life to that skin, a history there. And I do like the smoothness because it really pulls out the scar that I have down. But at the same time, I lose a bit of that life. I lose some of the life. That's a learning point on this painting, definitely. I like what you did with the cheek today. Yeah, thank you. I think it turned out okay. It turned out okay. The shape of the shadow on, the reference, it goes up this way a bit more. But when we turn off like the reference, and it's always good to do this, I think, at some point where we just turn off our reference or what we're looking at and say, does it make a good painting? Is it good painting on its own? Can it stand upon its own? Because this is how people are going to look at our artwork, right? We're not going to be like have the reference pasted next to our painting every time someone looks at our painting. So does it make a good painting without that? I think it does. Yeah. Dennis says, I'm saying the same thing, Doobie. Yeah. I think you did earlier. Doobie the cat, right on. Okay. All right, I'm tired. Wow. That was a long session. 3 hours on stream, 3.5 hours total for me because getting ready for it and everything. 2:30 already. I have to take my car in, get a tire fixed, and then walk to the gym at 3:30. So in an hour, I got life stuff to do. I can't be doing this art stuff all the time, guys. What do you think I am? Artist or something? I'm not Van Gogh. That, sometimes I think that's why 18th century artists were so much better than all of us, because this thing that we do was a profession at the time. And it's like, oh, that's what I do. I wake up in the morning, I paint all day, and I go to bed and wake up and paint all day, and wake up and paint all day, get paid for it all the time. And of course, the time spent on it. Anyway, I'm rambling now. That's how tired I am. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, for sticking around for this long. You guys are crazy. How crazy are you? Craziness. Especially you, Magnus, for sticking around this long, even though we disagree. Maybe. I don't know. But thank you so much. chrisbevan.com is my website. So you'll see it when I go to the end stream screen. Check out, actually, I have a mentorship, like a group mentorship that I'm doing. The next one is going to be on September 11th or something. You'll see that in the future. Then I have a one-on-one mentorship, the Painter's Path. Catch the Sunday stream at 1 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, -600 UTC. I'm building a drawing course for painters on the Painter's Path. So you can check it out live then. After those days, it's going to be going up where you can't make any comments on it, or you can pay for it to get feedback on your work and that kind of stuff. That's in the Painter's Path on my website. So, or just support me here by being here, which is the most awesome thing you can do. Thank you guys so much. Hey, Matthew, glad you're here still. Glad you stuck around. Hope your Fridays are going well. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And well, I'll see you tomorrow. Let's see. Gotta look at my calendar. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And definitely Sunday as well. Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.